Joining me to talk about food prices and how they're affecting the world's consumers is John Quelch, Dean of the Herbert Business School at the University of Miami. Good to see you, sir, and thank you for joining us. You know, we're perplexed by all this because, of course, we've been reporting on the price of food that's gone up, and now we've recently gotten a little bit of good news, and I don't know, I feel nervous to even celebrate. How should we feel?
I think we should feel pretty good, Phil. Obviously, the supply chain disruptions caused tremendous uncertainty in the food commodity markets, and that drove up the spot prices and the futures prices over the last year. And now, particularly with the deal that you spoke of earlier that affects the shipments out of Ukraine, there's some optimism in the market that will certainly, in terms of grain and cereal prices, modify the high levels of price increase that we've seen. So I think folks in emerging economies can take a little bit of comfort from the latest results, but still, as you pointed out, year on year, they represent a very, very significant and onerous level of inflation for people who are at or close to or under the poverty line.
Is it possible that food prices are just going to be higher across the board for everybody because it does cost more to ship goods, it does cost more to fertilize the fields, and quite frankly, there's probably less and less farmers every year because margins are getting squeezed, so they produce less stuff, which increases the price. This might be just a trend that we've seen for the last 10 years. Is that possible?
I think if you look back over the last 30 years, Phil, you'll see a tremendous improvement in global productivity in agriculture. There has been tremendous genetic science that has been brought to bear in improving yields, and you know, that is reflected in the fact that over the period of globalization, if you like, tremendous number of people were lifted out of abject poverty around the world. But recent events of the last year have driven, by some estimates, 25 to 50 million people back into poverty. Now, one of the problems that is not usually pointed out is that as Western consumers decide that they want to be more healthy, more nutrition conscious, they shift to farm-to-table type produce. And the waste that occurs when you are shipping produce, and you know it from looking in your own refrigerator, that there's always something that you forgot to eat that's now past its sell-by date, even though you refrigerated it and you've got to dispose of it. So curiously enough, the shift to eating more fresh produce puts more burden on supply chains and actually results in more food waste.
I'm just going to say there are things in the refrigerator that are probably different colors than they were when I first bought them, and I think that's probably a sign. But you bring up a very good point. In a research report that I read, nearly 30 to 35% of food of Americans goes to waste. And it's not just Americans, because a UN report or a global report shows that almost a third of global food supply goes to waste, and they highlight exactly what you said, which is transportation. And that's why I would push back and say, wait a minute, it's not the world doesn't have enough food, it's we're not doing a good enough job of getting the food from point A to B in an efficient way.
Right. So there are two elements here. One is the predictability of the crop size that needs to be harvested. So obviously with climate change, uncertainty, and weather variances, the size of the crop this year may be different from last year. You may need more or less labor to harvest it, and you may need more or fewer trucks or rail cars to transport it. A second key issue, as you point out, is the distribution itself. And in many emerging economies, quite frankly, the transportation infrastructure is just not sufficiently well developed to efficiently transport produce from its source to cities that might be several hundred miles away. The length of time that takes is burdensome, and as a result, the produce will deteriorate en route. Or if the roads are badly taken care of, and you're shipping in glass containers, half the glass jars
Right.
may be broken by the time it arrives. So distribution issues, often overlooked, are central, but also uncertain production crop sizes are also partly in this equation.
John, we agree. And with that, thank you very much. It's always good to see you, my friend, and thank you for making us feel guilty about the food that we waste in our refrigerator.
Okay. Phil, please clear out that refrigerator this weekend, okay?
All right, always good to see him.